I don't know what the future of comic books is. I don't think they'll ever be as big as they were because there's too much competition. I mean, now we have computers and we have videos and we have DVDs and we have video games and I mean, there's all these other new things. But I think they'll always be around.
Comic books. They didn't start with superheroes. They trace back to when our ancestors were dodging mammoths. I bet you didn't know that 17,000 years ago, cave artists drew sequential panels of hunts, spot beasts, chases. It's basically the first graphic novel. No words, just action. Beasts that tell a story. Some scholars argue these weren't just art, they were ritual comics to invoke hunting magic, blending spiritual and storytelling in ways that make modern comics look tame. Fast forward to Egypt, 1300 BC, the Book of Death, papyrus scrolls, illustrated guides to the afterlife with gods, monsters, and step-by-step spells, sequential art at its finest. Medieval Europe amps it up, the Bayeux Tapestry, 1066 AD, embroidered comic strip chronicling the Norman conquest, bloody battles, betrayals. It's a Game of Thrones in thread. I bet you didn't know it was commissioned by a bishop to justify William the Conqueror's invasion, making it propaganda comics centuries before Captain America punched Hitler. By the 1700s, satire explodes. William Hogarth's engravings from 1735, moral tales of debauchery in panels. Raunchy, critical of the elites. Controversial. Hogarth fought piracy laws to protect his work, foreshadowing today's creator rights battles. Enter the 1800s. Printing tech booms. Literacy rises. Rodolphe Töpffer dropped The Adventures of Mr. Obadiah Oldbuck in 1937. Wordy panels of slapstick romance, bootlegged to America in 1842 as the first U.S. comic book. But I bet you didn't know, Töpffer, a teacher, worried his little follies would corrupt youth. In 1890s America, media titans William Rudolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer duked it out in a circulation bloodbath, birthing yellow journalism. Richard Alcott's The Yellow Kid, 1895, a slum kid spouting slang from his yellow shirt. Kids adorned it, parents freaked out over the vulgar dialect. Controversy central. Hearst poaches Alcott. Pulitzer hires a copycat. Dual Yellow Kids sparked the first comic copyright laws. I bet you didn't know. The Yellow War not only coined yellow journalism, but proved comics could ignite real-world feuds and sell millions. Sunday's Funnies flourish. Winsor McCay's Little Nemo in Slumberland, 1905, with dreamscapes that twisted perspectives. George Harriman's Crazy Cat, 1913, poetic brick-throwing love triangle with the dark underbelly, rampant racism. Black characters as minstrel caricatures. I bet you didn't know Harriman, of Creole descent, passed as white to avoid discrimination, hiding his heritage while his work subtly critiqued society. In the early 1950s, comic books weren't a niche hobby. They were a cultural force. Americans were buying nearly 1 million comics every single month. Kids read them, adults read them, and that terrified people. Because when a medium gets so popular, someone always decides it's dangerous. Post-World War II, America was anxious. The Cold War had begun. Crime headlines were everywhere. Teenagers were suddenly seen as a problem.
It is my opinion, without any reasonable doubt and without any reservation, that comic books are an important contributing factor in many cases of juvenile delinquency.
Comic books became the perfect scapegoat. Comic book burnings were openly organized by schools, churches, and parent groups, sometimes with police watching. In 1954, psychiatrist Dr. Frederick Wertham published a book called Seduction of the Innocent. He claimed comics caused juvenile crime, violence, sexual deviance, and a moral collapse. I bet you didn't know. Wertham's research was deeply flawed. He based his conclusions on already troubled youth, then blamed comics anyways. Wertham went after specific characters. Batman and Robin were accused of promoting inappropriate relationships. Wonder Woman was labeled dangerous and anti-family. Later that year, the U.S. Senate held hearings on juvenile delinquency. Comic publishers were dragged in and publicly shamed. Explosive images were displayed like evidence in a criminal trial. I bet you didn't know. The most shocking comic pages shown to senators came from a publisher that was already out of business. Terrified of government regulation, publishers chose censorship instead. In late 1954, they created the Comics Code Authority. Retailers refused to sell any comic without the seal. The code outlawed the words horror and terror in its title. Vampires, werewolves, zombies, excessive violence, sexual suggestion of any kind, criminals who weren't punished, corrupt police or government officials. Entire genres disappeared overnight. Horror comics collapsed. Crime comics vanished. Legendary publisher EC Comics, creators of Tales of the Crypt, was nearly destroyed. Dozens of comic companies went bankrupt with a single year because of the code. But comics didn't die. They adapted. Superheroes turned cleaner, safer, more controlled. This era became known as the Silver Age. By the 1980s and 90s, creators pushed back. Independent comics thrived. Graphic novels broke rules. One by one, publishers abandoned the code. DC officially dropped it in 2011. Marvel had already walked away. The seal quietly disappeared. DC begins in 1934 with National Allied Publications by Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson. First comic, New Fun #1 in 1935. Detective Comics #1 in 1937 gave the company its name. Action Comics #1, 1838. Cleveland teens Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, inspired by pulps and a personal tragedy, create Superman. Rejected for years, they sell the rights to DC for $130. I bet you didn't know. Siegel sued in 1947 over Superboy, stolen from his notes while he served in World War II, settled for scraps. Joe Shuster went blind from strain, proofreading porn for cash. Detective Comics #27 in 1939 debuted Batman by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Wonder Woman arrived in 1941 by William Marston. The Golden Age thrived during World War II with the Justice Society of America in 1940. The first ever superhero team. Post-war, sales drop. DC's shift to westerns, romance, sci-fi. Silver Age ignited in 1956 with Showcase #4, reviving The Flash as Barry Allen, ushering in scientific heroes. Aquaman, Green Lantern reboots followed. The Brave and the Bold #28 in 1960 formed the Justice League. Teen Titans in 1964. I bet you didn't know, Siegel and Shuster sued DC multiple times over Superman's rights, claiming they were cheated out of millions. A controversy that dragged on for decades. 1970 brought relevance. Green Lantern, Green Arrow tackled racism, drugs. Superman versus Muhammad Ali in 1978. At The Killing Joke, 1988, paralyzed Batgirl. I bet you didn't know. In 1988's Batman, A Death in the Family, let fans vote to kill Robin, Jason Todd, via phone. He died, sparking outrage over the dark tones and the reader's involvement. Death of Superman, 1992, sold millions, but was criticized as a gimmick. Nightfall, 1993, broke Batman's back, but financial woes hit. DC was acquired by Warner Brothers in 1969. Marvel Comics' birth starts in 1939 with timely publications by Martin Goodman. Marvel Comics #1 introduced Human Torch and Namor, selling nearly 900,000 copies. World War II brought patriotic heroes like Captain America punching Hitler in 1941. Post-war superheroes fade.
Which character is, would you say, is closest to your own character and personality?
Probably the character but not really, because he's a scientist and I'm not. But in personality, probably Reed Richards in the Fantastic Four, because he talks too much and he tends to get boring after a while because they can't shut him up. And he tries to use big words. Actually, I don't know enough big words, so I don't have to worry about that too much.
Inspired by DC's Justice League, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created Fantastic Four, flawed heroes in a shared universe. Hits followed: Hulk, Spider-Man, Thor, Iron Man, Avengers, X-Men, Black Panther in 1966, Doctor Strange in 1963. Marvel outsold DC with its witty dialogue and social commentary. I bet you didn't know, 1980's Avengers 200 depicts Miss Marvel's rape and impregnation by her son from another dimension, later retconned amid backlash. The 1960s underground comics movement rebelled against the code. Artists like Robert Crumb pushed boundaries with explicit, satirical content. The term graphic novel was coined in 1964 by Richard Kyle, but exploded in 1978 with Will Eisner's A Contract with God, with a poignant collection of Bronx tenement tales, blending autobiography and fiction. The 1980s revolutionized graphic novels. Alan Moore and David Gibbons' Watchmen, 1968, deconstructed superheroes with dark themes of power and morality. Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, 1986, aged Batman into a gritty vigilante. In 1990, Todd McFarlane's groundbreaking Spider-Man series sold over 2 million copies, heralding a new era where artists become stars. By 1991, Jim Lee's X-Men #1 shattered records with 8 million units moved, a pinnacle yet unmatched. 1992 marked a rebellion, the birth of Image Comics, forged by McFarlane, Lee, and Robert Liefeld, who fled Marvel's constraints for creator-owned empires. Icons like Spawn emerged, challenging the old guard. The 1992-1993 Death of Superman saga, where the Man of Steel fell to Doomsday, captivated the world and selling millions. I bet you didn't know that the Death of Superman was conceived merely to postpone his wedding to Lois Lane, aligning with a TV series timeline, a cynical ploy that ignited debates over narrative integrity. 1995's Age of Apocalypse reimagined a dystopian X-Men world under a mutant tyranny, and 1991's Infinity Gauntlet saw Thanos wield unlimited power, a tale that would echo in cinemas decades later. But underneath the gloss lay ruins. The spectator bubble burst, culminating in Marvel's 1996 bankruptcy, nearly extinguishing the medium. As the millennium turned, comics found salvation in silver screens. The 2000 X-Men film and 2002's Spider-Man ignited a renaissance, boosting sales to 400 million by mid-decade. 2006's Civil War divided the Marvel Universe. Heroes clashed over government oversight. In 2009, Disney's $4 billion acquisition of Marvel transformed comics into multimedia juggernauts, while graphic novels explored deeper, darker themes. The 2010s ushered in reinvention. DC's 2011 New 52 rebooted continuity post-Flashpoint, injecting grit into timeless tales. Marvel's 2015 all-new, all-different lineup championed diversity. Miles Morales as Spider-Man, Jane Foster as Thor. Far from fading, the industry pulses with variety in the 2020s. Take Marvel's Ultimate Spider-Man, relaunched in 2024, which has become a critical and commercial smash hit, headlining the new Ultimate Universe line and consistently ranking among top sellers. DC's Absolute Batman followed suit, dominating sales charts in 2025 as one of the decade's top-performing titles, proving the Dark Knight's enduring appeal. From DC's iconic Batman epics to Marvel's web-slinging adventures, sales soar, conventions buzz, and stories evolve. Comics aren't just surviving, they're thriving, inspiring new generations to dream boldly.
I've tried to write stories that anybody and everybody would enjoy. I've tried to make them understandable enough and exciting or suspenseful or interesting enough for youngsters to hold their interest. And I've tried to make them hopefully intelligent enough for older people. It seems to me all of the things that I loved to read when I was a kid, I think they would have been good for any people of any age.
And there you have it, the epic journey of comics. From the pulp pages of the 1930s to the blockbuster screens of today, we've seen heroes rise, industries crash and reborn, and stories that mirror our world's triumphs and controversies. Whether it's DC's iconic symbols of justice or Marvel's relatable flawed champions, sparking imaginations and debate along the way. If you enjoyed this dive into comic history, smash that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into pop culture, and hit that bell for notifications. And we'll see you again on the next I Bet You Didn't Know.